Welcome to this episode of HR and Cocktails. In case you're new to us, HR and Cocktails is a podcast about all things HR, from strategy to retention to development and everything in between. Today, we're going to talk about training and development plans. And my guest today is Amber Trail. Hi, Amber.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yes, of course, of course. So Amber, tell us about you and where you are and, your role in your organization.
Yes, so I am the managing consultant at Prescott HR. My role has two separate pieces to it, which makes it really unique in the fact that I still get to work with my own clients, but I also get to help support all of the consultants that we have on our team, which is fantastic, which goes right into our topic today.
It does, because we just finished, well, not we, I can take no credit for it. You just put together all the development plans for the team. So
Yes.
Very exciting. So you've been hands-on in the development world. So What is development? Because I feel like organizations use the word training and development interchangeably, right?
Right.
So is training and development the same thing?
No, not at all. It's
Yeah.
very separate.
Yeah. So what is development?
Development is an area where, we all have what I don't like to say is a weakness. It's not necessarily a weakness, it's a skill that we can always improve on.
Yeah.
So a development is an area that we can improve on, and having actionable steps and goals set up for us with the support and resources to improve those areas of development.
Yes. So when we talk to our clients and having conversations, I'm like, well, I call them areas of opportunity.
Yes.
So there's nothing wrong per se. It's just an area of opportunity. I agree. Training and development are not the same thing. When I think about training is when you're learning a particular skill, a thing that can be tested for. You're gaining knowledge on a specific thing. But development is longer term. It's more competency based, and it takes a longer time, and it's moving toward a larger goal of getting you ready for the next step. So it's not necessarily I'm going to train you how to operate this machine, or I'm going to train you on how to use this piece of technology, right? Development is much larger. So definitely, and I think it's important for organizations to understand that, because when they use training and development interchangeably, they usually focus on the training side.
They do.
Yeah, they don't usually focus on the development side as much. And so then when they're looking across their organization to look at who's ready for the next role, it becomes hard because they haven't developed
Those skills.
Exactly. So with organizations that maybe are doing development, what are some reasons that maybe their development plans maybe either aren't working, aren't accomplishing what they need to? What are some of those reasons?
If a development plan does not have an actionable step, a goal, a metric, then it's really not achievable. It's all about accountability. So it's not just accountability for the employee getting the development plan, it's also for the manager supporting that employee. So when you review your development plan, it's actionable steps that you can take to improve on a skill. It's like improving that brain power. And once you do that, okay, how do we know that you've achieved that skill? How do we know that you've developed that area? And it's really, truly that accountability piece that holds both of them, accountable to make sure that they have developed and said they were going to do what they said they were going to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, when we talk about accountability and metrics, how do you even start? Because that's hard.
It's very hard. It's always hard, especially for me, to attach like a number to a goal. But you have to really look at those SMART goals. So being specific on a goal that ties back to that area that you want to help them improve on. What resources can you provide to them? At what timeline create a timeline. So do you want to have it done in a year, in next quarter? What does that look like? And then having, okay, how do we know this person's successful in developing that, that skill? So measuring what that looks like, but being specific, and it has to be attainable within that time frame. So being very specific with the goal itself can help you figure out how to, tie a number to it or attach a number to it, if that's possible. And in most cases it is.
Yes, absolutely. So we'll talk about goal setting in just a minute, but I think we need to get a cocktail.
I agree.
All right. So what would you like today?
A gin basil smash.
All right. Sounds good. Gin basil smash coming right up. So Amber has chosen a gin basil smash. So Amber, why'd you pick that drink?
Gin is totally new for me,
Yeah.
so I like to experiment with some new and cool drinks.
I love it. I love it. So let's get started. So we're going to take a few basil leaves. We're going to put them into our shaker. Maybe just, 8, 10, however many you want. Put them down into your shaker. I have already fresh squeezed some lemon juice. Please use fresh juice. People, please, it's important. So we're gonna do about 0.75 ounces of lemon juice, and then we are going to muddle. We're gonna use our muddler, and we're just gonna press it down in there really so we can get the essence.
It always smells
I know
good.
it does. And I grew this basil, y'all, in my yard, so yay. All right, so we've done that. And then we're gonna do some simple syrup. So 0.75 ounces of simple syrup, the same amount that we used of our lemon juice. So we're gonna do that. And then for the star of the show, we're gonna use some gin. And for our gin, I have Bombay. You can use whatever gin you like. We're gonna do 2 ounces, but this is all a double, so because I'm making 2 drinks, so we're gonna do that. And I actually didn't think about that for my simple syrup and my lemon juice. So I'm gonna pour a little bit more of that in there. Was just thinking about the recipe. All right, just a little bit more, so, okay. And then we're gonna add some ice to our shaker, and then we're gonna shake this. And I've already put some ice in the glasses. So, all right. So I've already put some ice in our glasses, and we are going to shake so we can get it nice and chilled and mixed. All right, normally I would shake it a little bit longer, but now we are going to strain and pour.
It smells so good.
It does. Now, I put club soda in mine. Some people don't. I put a little bit of club soda in mine because I like it a little fizzy and a little bit lighter. Okay, hi. So I'm just gonna put a little club soda in mine. And then we are going to garnish with some basil. Make it look prettier.
Perfect.
All right.
Cheers. Very refreshing.
All right, so here we go.
Cheers.
We already kind of had the cheers, but we'll do it again. And if I can get this around here. All right, awesome. So, goal setting. That's what we were talking about before. So, because I think that it's important as we think about developing people, that it's important for organizations to understand goals, because many organizations have organizational strategic goals. Some don't, and that's okay. But it's helpful, right? So if an organization has goals, right, cascading those goals down, meaning breaking them down into how does this department, position, group help contribute to this strategic goal, right? So when they're doing that, let me say this. I think it does help with measuring, right? Because you can measure how much of whatever is being done and help to cascade that back up. But when we don't have those goals, or when the organization hasn't mapped those out, what are some things that managers can do to help create goals for their or their individuals, whether it's the person or the team? What can managers do?
If an organization does not have those goals set up, that's okay. In many cases, what I'll have them do is review the job descriptions. And I think looking back at the job descriptions, if there's a skill on there that the employee may not necessarily be up to par with, I think you start there. But then it's a conversation. Having a conversation, if you're setting goals just for the employee, having a conversation with them and asking them, look, you've been in this role for however long. What do you see areas that need to be improved on? What areas do you want to develop? Or maybe it's something that's not even on the job description and you want to help support them developing that. How do you do that? So it's a conversation. And now if you're setting goals for a department, it's great to have a team conversation. Finding out where that department wants, what you want it to look like, in the next quarter, in the next 6 months, year, whatever that looks like, having that conversation with them and getting that input, because that is how you develop a strong development plan individually, and then you kind of work your way up. So from the individual to the department to the organization.
Yep. And I think that that's important as well. And when we talk about like going to the job description and looking at skills, I think that it's important too that we tie competencies to that. And also asking that person, where do you see yourself in 3 years, in 5 years? What role do you want to be in? I think two things. A, sometimes people think that everyone wants to move up. Everybody doesn't always want to move up, right? And then B, I think that if we really do want someone to move up and they want to move up, we need to look at what are the skills, competencies, experiences that they need to have had and or mastered or been exposed to, any of them, right? In order to be ready for that next role.
Right.
So the development plan will help to do that. So how do we do that in organizations? Because listen, I think that because we work with small businesses, right? And they don't always have the, mapped out next role. They don't have the what does it look like next. How does a manager help to develop someone? Because people need to be developed no matter what. How does a manager do that in an organization that may not have the next step mapped out?
I think in a few different ways. So one is, no matter what, I think you should support your employee if they say, and be prepared for this, if they say in 5 years, I want to do this, and it's something completely different from what that organization does.
Yeah.
I think the manager still needs to help support them in areas that could potentially help them with a specific skill or something they need to grow on to get to that place, because you're building that trust and rapport with that employee. So they could stay longer because you're helping them and supporting them. But if an employee, is like, look, I want to be in charge of this, but we don't have anything like that right now. A manager's job is to still find out what skills they need to attain to develop into a role. That role may not exist, and that's okay. But essentially, job descriptions don't usually stay the same. Correct. So it's essentially adjusting the job description and helping that employee move forward, even if that is not available right now. You should always have a plan, because you never know what's going to happen in the organization.
Yep.
You could massively grow, you could downsize. Either way, if you want to support your employee, you need to find a way to do that. And by doing that, it's going to be developing a skill that could help out the organization later on.
Yeah, exactly. And I also think that particularly in small organizations, it's important to avoid that single point of failure, right? Having that one person who is the only person who knows this thing. So if there's someone, even though another role like that might not be available, if someone's like, I really want to do what Amber does, well, great. I'm going to show you what Amber does, even if that role is not available right now, because when Amber develops and moves into another role, you're almost ready. Right. I also, I tell people that growth is not always vertical. It can be horizontal. Like you said, adjusting that job description, giving them what people call stretch assignments, right? And so a stretch assignment being something that's not really in their job, that might be a little bit above what they've done in the past, but to help stretch them and to develop their their skills and their
Right.
knowledge, and to also be able to see what they're capable of.
Right.
I don't think that we always think about that
No.
and ask people. We sometimes just assign it. We think, okay, I want this person to do this, but not even thinking about who else might be able to do it, so we can get exposure to who may have skills that we don't know about, right?
And you might have an employee that has that skill, but they just don't speak up about it. So you don't even know. And I think that really starts with that conversation. So, you may have employees that are certified in something that could help the organization, but you don't know because you haven't had that conversation, that really in-depth personal conversation with them, because it helps you understand more about where they're at, what skills they already have, or what skills they can develop. And that really could lead into, potential mentorship with another employee, knowing that one's got this skill we didn't even know about.
Yeah.
And they could help the other individual that wants to develop that skill.
Yeah, absolutely. In many organizations, I'll hear employees say, well, my manager did not tell me about this opportunity, or my manager hasn't told me what trainings are available. And I understand that, and that is valid. But does the manager and leadership, are they the only ones that own the responsibility for employee development?
No, absolutely not.
Yeah.
Everyone needs to take ownership of it, and that includes the employee. If an employee really does want to develop a skill, it is their job to tell their manager or the owner, whoever that is, say, hey, I really want to start learning more about this. And it at least puts it in their brain that, okay, it might not be something we can do right now, but at least it puts it in their brain if an opportunity comes up, or to help them develop those plans, so that I know this individual wants to do this, okay, but I just now need to help support them.
Right, exactly. And I think that that's important because managers are juggling and managing many things and many employees, right? And so sometimes, while there are some managers that are neglectful. Okay, so I'm not at all saying that that's not the case. It is the case. There are some managers that just don't care. But I would like to think, I'd like to think that most do, but they don't always know where to start. They don't know how to start that conversation. And so they don't, right? And so it's important for employees to understand that they also have responsibility for their development and identifying some things. Now, keeping in mind the limitations financially of the organization, the limitations of, you may not be able to go for a week for a conference because the organization may not have the ability to do that. But there may be some things that you can do in bringing them forward and saying, hey, here's something that I think is interesting. And the other thing that I cannot stress enough for employees is to have a business case for why this is something that you want to do and how it ties back to organizational goals, the goals of your position, your development goals, et cetera, to make sure you have a business case. I think that many times, and I think that this is something that I also say about HR professionals too, that business case is important. You have to have it.
You do.
If the organization is going to use its resources, there needs to be a business case for why they're going to do it, not just because I want to do it, because it seems like it would be the right thing to do. That's not a business case.
No, you have to have metrics to back it up.
Exactly. So thinking about development plans, we've talked about individuals and things like that, but, it's hard to come up with something for each and every employee. How can an organization create a development plan or a development structure that's also scalable, that can be used for departments or groups?
So actually what I had done when I first, because it was very hard for me to wrap my head around what I wanted this development plan to look like. It was great. We don't have a huge team, but it was like, how do I not have to recreate the wheel for every single person?
Right.
So I thought about what core competencies an HR professional, HR consultant needs to have or should have. So I started with a self-assessment. I had each consultant self-assess their core competencies, where they felt that the rating, from 1 to 5, where they felt they landed on that scale. And then areas that they wanted to develop in, areas that they felt were their strengths. And I used that self-assessment to then analyze how to create their development plan. So you can have almost like a template that you can use for each individual person. There are sections that could be just for the department. Like, here is where we need to develop as an entire team. And then here's pieces where I see that, you've noticed that you want to develop in. So it also helps that whenever I completed each one of those, there were key pieces where some consultants were really strong in a certain area and some wanted to learn that area. So being able to put them together and, that's a free resource. You're using their time, but it's, again, if they're already doing something, having the other consultants shadow is a great free resource.
Yes.
And, like I told the consultants, I'm like, let's look and see what we can get you. And again, we come across tons of free trainings, webinars, workshops. And, anytime we come across that, we share it with the team. Like, hey, we found this. Like, if it's something you want to join, go for it. Because it always helps develop that skill. But I think having that, what the core competencies look like for that specific department, and then doing like a self-assessment, and then having team goals and then individual goals.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I like the self-assessment because it gets them involved in the process. Because if we just hand them something and they didn't have any input, they're not bought into it.
Right.
It becomes, my favorite word, it becomes perfunctory, and they just, go along with it, but they're not really bought
invested.
in. Exactly. So definitely important to get that feedback from them as they're developing it. And let's talk about, we've got a development plan. We've rolled it out. Now what?
Now it's time for accountability to roll in.
Yeah.
So one of the pieces that I strongly recommend is that, if you have weekly or biweekly meetings, it's great to just kind of do a run through. But you don't necessarily need to have that development plan in front of you. But I think going into it, you need to have a plan and a timeline set up. But every quarter, and I always tell people when they do a development plan, this is not set in stone. This is always going to be changing. Not necessarily because I'm changing it or you're changing it, but the role may have changed. The organization may have changed, but we are going to talk about it and we're going to figure out how it rolls into your development plan. So every quarter, reevaluating that with the employee and going over, okay, you've accomplished this. Fantastic. Or, okay, you want to learn a new skill. Or, okay, this may not apply anymore. This is something you've noticed that you've tried it, you're not really too interested in it.
Yeah.
So it's definitely that conversation, the accountability piece, and having those regular review sessions.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, and I agree. I think that without accountability, it's useless, right? But continuing to visit it, it's a working document, right? And you may go down a path with someone on a particular competency and realize maybe that really wasn't what we were looking for. Maybe that wasn't. Maybe we need to adjust it and call it something else, right? So I think it's important for that. And also that constantly moving also makes the team agile.
Right.
Because you can't have a team that can't adjust and can't move. And in this work environment, things are changing. The business has to change based on the needs of the market. Things are moving differently, right?
And so it's quickly.
Quickly, correct. So if we have people on our team, and not just us, but just organizations, have people on their team that can't make those adjustments, it's going to be really hard for the organization. But it's also important for leaders to think that way, right? And to also not be, following a checklist specifically,
Right.
but be willing to say, yeah, we got to move some of these things. We got to make some adjustments. I mean, we did in November, we were like, this is our strategy. And then at the end of January, we were like, this is our strategy because we had to make changes because things had changed in the market and the
Right.
general environment. So, and because you've been working with them, we were able to make those adjustments.
Right.
So, is there a link between development plans and retention?
Yes.
Yes.
Number one, if you have the buy-in from the employee, what does that say to them?
Yep.
It says they want to invest in me. They want to see me grow and succeed.
Yep.
And that definitely helps with retention. You're not just going into your job and working 9 to 5 and leaving. It is, I'm going to my job because I'm excited, because now I get to learn this new skill. And it's not just developing, within that role, but it's adding value to you as a human.
Yep.
And that skill stays with you. So it's definitely retention. The development plans help tremendously with retention because you build that rapport with your team, your employees. They see that you want to support them. They see that you want to provide resources so that they can be successful.
Right. And they're just not a number or, responsible for a cog or a widget, but that
Right.
you care about them as a person and developing them personally, because you are correct. Anything that you pour into them, when they do decide to move on, they take that with them. And that's okay.
Right.
And that's okay because our goal is to develop people. Right. And I think that human resources is, the business of people.
Right.
Period. Right. All right. So one last question before we wrap it up. What are some metrics that can be used to determine whether or not the development plans are successful?
So with timelines, especially if you have a specific, let's say a certification that you want the employee to get, add a timeline. So you could say, I want you to get this compensation certification by the end of November. That doesn't necessarily have a number tied to it, but it does if they passed it by November 30th.
Right.
You can also use it as if someone's in sales. I want you to hit this sales revenue by this date. If you want them to increase revenue, increase it by 25% by this date. So having the timeline set with, a specific and measurable number is showing how successful or unsuccessful those plans are. If they're unsuccessful, that's okay. You just need to adjust. You need to look if this is still something they want to attain, because they still have to put their heart and soul into it, or it's not attainable. But also it's just measuring, did you give them enough time? Did you support them enough? So making sure that you set those goals, very specific goals, with something that they can actually attain, and you have to support them through that.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I think, the creation of the development plan, tying it to the goals, creating metrics and accountability is what can help create the successful development plan,
Right.
and also hopefully create the retention and the stickiness so that the people want to stay.
Exactly.
Amber, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And I think that this has been a great topic, very timely, because I think that organizations are always trying to figure out, how do I grow people and help them stay in my organization?
Exactly.
Yes, thank you. And thank you for joining us for this episode of HR and Cocktails.